Hey, everybody. Welcome to the first Conversations with Dreadlock Dave. And that's Dreadlock Dave, that's me, Dreadlock Dave McDougald. And my first guest happens to be John McDougald, my dad.
Good morning.
So, Dad, musically, I was influenced by you in several different ways. And I love to tell the story of we were, I was about 8 years old, and we were in the basement of the house, and somehow the conversation of vinyl records came up, and you introduced a stack of vinyl records to me, and I heard my first vinyl records in the basement as an 8 year old, and I remember the first song that I heard was Hound Dog
Oh,
by Elvis Presley. And so it was an influential moment in my life, and I still have the Elvis Presley Hound Dog record on my ceiling in my studio. And so I remember that as being the first major musical moment in my life. And I was wondering what your first musical moment in life was. Do you have a time that you remember or a song?
well, not so much a song, but our family moved to Ohio in 1947. I was 3 years old. And one of the things that both my parents decided that they wanted to do was have everybody take piano lessons. And so, as a 3 year old, I started piano lessons.
Wow.
So, but that's before, I would have been influenced by anything on the radio or anything like that. But I was actually playing the piano at three.
Okay.
And just so we're clear, I never became a great pianist, but it was a wonderful introduction to music in general.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Wow, I never knew that. So was there a song or this you were taking lessons from um, a, a neighbor?
Well, no, it was a pianist who was not, 15 miles away maybe, but
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. And was there a particular song or moment other than just being introduced to music in this way?
Um, I don't think any particular song. That was because so much of that stuff was just, playing notes and octaves and things. And so I was probably at least 10 or 12 years old before I actually started playing what you would consider to be popular music.
Okay.
And by that time, of course, I'd had lots of other exposure to popular music, so it wasn't the piano link that made it. I think the first I was thinking when you were talking about the music, the first record I bought was House of Blue Lights, and it was a '78, and it was right when popular music was changing from '78s to '45s.
Okay.
And that particular song was one I'm sure I had heard on the radio and decided I've just got to get myself a copy of that. But I had to get it in '78.
Yeah, okay. And so who was the artist?
Um, I'm stuck on that one. I thought about that earlier today and I did not come up with the name.
Okay, we'll put that we'll add that in editing.
Okay.
um, yeah, well, excellent. So, did you amass a collection of 78s or 45s? And was the Hound Dog, the Elvis Presley, was that one that you had purchased?
Yes, it was.
Okay,
And I didn't have a big collection of them. I probably had 50 or 60 would be my guess.
okay,
Was what my collection ended up at.
all right. And are there some other standout artists that,
Well, as you know, I got a little bit involved in barbershop music,
yes,
and I had quite a few 45s with barbershop songs on them.
okay,
So typically much older songs because barbershop started back in the late 1800s, and so a lot of the songs were from then and the teens and the 1920s.
Yeah.
And so I had a lot of songs that I enjoyed, and that's what the good quartets were singing.
Okay. And so how were you exposed to barbershop music?
Um, well, the first formal exposure, which is the one I remember, I was in the ninth grade, and I was singing in the ninth grade choir, and the choir director was getting ready to have us put on a program, and he wanted a quartet to sing a barbershop number. And back in those days, um, I'm not quite sure when my voice changed, but I think maybe I still had access to the higher voice,
Yeah.
and so I got picked as the first tenor in the barbershop quartet.
Okay.
And so we sang a gospel song called "Poor Man Lazarus," and that was, just being in that quartet with three other guys who were pretty good singers. Uh, that was the link, and that was when I really got started.
Okay. Yeah. Wow, that's great. And so that was the music or the choir teacher or that
Yeah, the choir,
in junior high,
ninth grade, right?
ninth grade. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. So and then you looked for recordings of barbershop
Hmm.
and bought vinyl records.
Yep, lots of LPs.
Okay, and LPs.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so was it fairly popular at that time? I mean, in the public eye?
Um, I would say the 50s and 60s were probably where they reached the high point
Yeah.
because, well, there weren't that many other interesting things going on because rock and roll was just kind of kicking off.
Yeah.
But it was fairly popular. There weren't a ton of records out, but every year there was an international competition, and they put out a top 10 singers from each one of those competitions, and I got each one of those
Uh,
as they came out.
okay. Yeah. Okay. A compilation of the most popular barbershop songs.
Well, yes, but also the ones that they competed with.
Okay.
So some of them probably weren't as well known as popular songs,
Okay.
but a
Yeah.
lot of them were.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Wow. So then you from there that first performance and how was that performance? Uh,
Um, well, it was great from my perspective. I think it was okay.
okay. Yeah. There's no audio evidence of
No.
that. Okay. Um, so then after that, what led you further into barbershop?
Um, well, that was ninth grade, and when I was a sophomore, uh, a fellow I knew, he and his brother were both singers, and they wanted to form a barbershop quartet.
Okay.
And so they asked me, and I joined and sang a couple of years with them. And then I had a very strange thing happen in college. Um, they had what they called a freshman directory, and they had a face picture of you, and you were supposed to write down three or four things that you were interested in. Like I wrote down math and football and some other stuff, and I also wrote down barbershop.
Yeah.
And the third day I was on campus, a fellow who was a sophomore that year apparently had gotten a hold of one of the freshman directories, leafing through it. He says, "Oh my, here's a guy that wants to sing barbershop." He knocked on my door and said, "You want to form a quartet?" And I said, "Okay."
Yeah.
So that was the next kind of serious step for me because he was a very talented um, singer and musician, and we found two other guys that wanted to sing, and so that was kind of the beginning of my serious participation in barbershop.
Okay. So and then how did you find the other guys, the two other guys?
Fortunately, the other fellow looked for them,
Oh, okay,
and
okay.
I think we were all in the men's glee club, and so I think he was just picking out other people who might have been interested in doing barbershop.
Okay, okay, yeah. This was the College of Worcester.
Yes.
Yes, excellent. So then, how long did that group perform and stay together? And were there highlights to that portion of the career?
Yes. We sang together all 4 years I was in school, and we we had what was called a chapel program every day on campus, and no, I guess it was 4 days a week, and you started off by singing a, a church song, but then in terms of what was presented then was people giving speeches, people doing other kinds of entertaining, humor, the whole spectrum. And we were invited to perform at one of those. And it turned out that the day we were scheduled to perform was the day that John Glenn was launched into space. And it had to be early in 1962 because it was my freshman year in college. And so they canceled us so they could put a television in front of the auditorium or in front of the church building and let everybody watch John Glenn get shot up. And so this fellow that formed our quartet, we were invited to come back the following week, same day of the following week. And he started off, and I apologize for this, but this is what he came up to the microphone and he said, "When Mr. Glenn's missile went up like a thistle and looked like a missile, oh, I'm so sorry. Can I start again?
Oh yeah.
When Mr. Glenn's missile shot up like a thistle and went out like a missile, we did from here fizzle. Our ires did sizzle about our dismissal. And when I did quizzle, Dean Bricker said, this'll outdo anything your quartet can do, so come back next week." And there were 1,000 people and they just went nuts. So it didn't really make any difference how badly we sung. But we just had this wonderful day there, and we kind of got a reputation for being fun.
Right. Wow, that's excellent. That's really priming the audience. It's hard once you capture them like that. It's that's a good thing for a performer.
Yeah, and some of the things we did would be we'd sing a chord, and then each one of us would go up a little bit and down a little bit, and you could hear the chord stop sounding like a chord and then coming back and sounding like a chord.
Yeah.
And then we'd sing a chord, and one of us would sing an A, and one would sing an E, and one would sing an Ah. And then he said, "Okay, everybody change to a Ah." And, this chord that sounded horrible, all of a sudden, oh, look how that went together.
Wow. Okay, so maybe that's where I get some of my interest in avant-garde music from. That's very, oh, that's great. That's an interesting technique. And wow. So, like you said, he was a great musician and
Yes, very talented.
seemed talented and interesting and excellent. What was his name?
Dave Clymer.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I remember that name. Okay, excellent. Wow. So you performed, and talking about humor, that there's a lot of that in barbershop.
Yes.
Where did that come from? Or what, do you know the history of the skits and the kitschy?
I just think, based on my experience. If you just do a performance and all you do is sing, a lot of people can get kind of bored. I mean,
Sure.
you know, great singers I'm not talking about, but, you know, just average folks. And so I think that was what encouraged the insertion of some other things that kind of changed the pace, and you got a little break, and the audience got a little break from listening to a song. So,
Yeah.
and humor is always a great way to do something like that.
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, as a performer myself, sometimes I get in a little joke
There you go.
in between my songs, or try to connect with the audience in that way, and yeah, well, that's great. So after college, what you continued on, or
I did. We Carol and I got married a year after we graduated from college, and you know I was kind of busy doing family things and also my job that I had just started with a telephone company. And about a year and a half into our marriage, I went to. I had been given information about a fellow who was a barber, and he wasn't too far from where we lived, and so I went out there to get a haircut, and I look around the room, and there's all kinds of music stuff hanging, and I said, "Oh, what's all the music stuff about?" He said, "Oh, I sing in a barbershop chorus here," and I thought, "Oh, that sounds like fun."
yeah,
And so that was in he was in North Ridgeville, but the chorus itself was in Elyria, Ohio, and so it wasn't too far a drive from where we were, and so I became a member of the chorus there.
okay, yeah. So at some point, you became a director, and you also had your own quartets.
Yes, Elyria, I had been there about a year, and there was a fellow who was just a marvelous director, and he asked me if I would be willing to be an assistant director, and I had never done any directing, but you know, I would go in and for some of the rehearsals and you know take them through one or two songs and that kind of stuff, and so that was kind of my starting point, and I changed choruses a few years after that. They got serious about an international competition that they thought they were going to qualify for, and they wanted to rehearse 3 nights a week, and that just wasn't going to work out for me.
Yeah.
So I ended up changing to a chorus in North Olmsted, and it turned out that the fellow who was directing there wanted to step down, and so I ended up becoming the director of the North Olmsted chorus.
Okay.
And how far do you want me to go with this story?
Well, yeah, continue, please.
Well, I was director there for 10 or 12 years. I got a job transfer to Chicago. I knew of a chorus that I was thinking about joining in the Chicago. There were at least 8 or 10 choruses in the greater Chicago area. And, but I got a call from a guy, and we were living in St. Charles, which is way west of downtown, and he said, "We just formed a chorus in St. Charles, and we're looking for a director."
Wow.
know anybody who might be good at that? So I directed there for a couple of years. I ended up, that chorus kind of folded after a while. There was a chorus in Elgin, Illinois. I went over and sang there, became the assistant director, and then became the director of that chorus. And then when we retired to Arizona in 2003, moved into a town, Sedona, and it turned out about 18 months before they had formed a barbershop chorus in Sedona, and 6 months later I was a director there and directed them for 20 years.
Yeah.
So
amazing.
I got about 54 years of directing in.
Right, right. So now you're back in Northeast Ohio, and you've found a chorus, or you found there's still a couple active choruses.
Yes, there are, and one has reformed in Elyria, and I have not become active yet, but it is certainly one that I'm going to look at now, and I'm going to look at not being the director because
Right.
I don't want to do that anymore.
Right.
I just like to be able to sing.
Yeah. So, to back up just a little bit, before you became a director, your knowledge of you could read music, and was that from your piano training?
Absolutely, yes.
And when you're looking at a piece of barbershop music, there are typically four parts in a quartet.
Right.
Is that spread across the chorus generally? Do you have four sections?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Tenor, well, they're called tenor, lead, baritone, and bass, which is a little, usually it's first tenor, second tenor if you think about other kinds of music.
Okay.
But the thing that's uh, different about barbershop harmony is that the melody is sung by the second highest voice, not the highest voice. If you look at soprano, alto, tenor, bass music, the soprano virtually always has the melody. And same with, any other kind of four-part harmony. It's normally the highest voice. And that difference gives you all kinds of other options which create liver chords when you have a voice singing above the melody.
Okay. And so typically, if you were to do an arrangement on a barbershop chord, they are seventh chords?
Um, yeah, there are a lot of seventh chords.
Yeah.
That's a very popular chord, but of course, with the way music is written, you always have to end. Well, I won't say always, but 98% of the time, you're going to end with the lead part singing do, or the key that you're in.
Yes.
The tenor part, the simple chord would put them on a third above that.
Mm-hmm.
The baritone on the fifth below the key, and then the bass an octave lower than the melody.
Okay. So not necessarily four different notes.
No, very typically you'll have two people singing the tonic,
Yeah.
an octave apart,
Okay.
and sometimes two octaves apart depending on how it's structured. But that the seventh chords and the typical 1-3-5 chords are the most popular. But of course, depending upon where the melody goes, you have to fit chords that support the melody.
Yeah, sure, sure. Interesting. Yeah, it's a traditional, just great art form. It's something that I've obviously heard a lot of, growing up with your recordings and your shows. But yeah, it's been an amazing experience for me, and I'm looking forward today to singing with you in a quartet and with two other friends. And I just something else that during your career as a director in Sedona, traditionally this has been a male-occupied hobby, but you were instrumental in having women join the barbershop chorus there.
Yeah, just so we're clear, there were male quartets and choruses and female quartets and choruses.
Okay.
So there was a women's organization that was just like the men's organization, but they had been fairly specific about men only, women only.
Yes.
And yeah, we had an issue really in Sedona. I was one of two tenors singing. I should have been singing tenor at that stage of my life, but I was.
Yeah.
And the fellow who was the director had a health issue and had to drop out, and so that's when I stepped in as director, and the other fellow who was singing tenor moved, and so now we have a chorus with 0 tenors, and we were just kind of looking at each other like, what are we going to do? And one of the guys says, I think my wife would be willing to come in and sing. And I thought, hey, that puts a tenor in our group. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
And so we ended up, I think when I moved away from Sedona, I think we had about 18 men and 5 women in the chorus.
Yeah.
And we did catch a little heat from the national organization when we did it, but about 6 years ago, they finally caught on. And
Yeah.
they said, if women want to join, that's okay.
Okay. Excellent. That's great. Great story. One last thing, Dad. If
Sure.
someone's interested in barbershop, where would you, or being involved in barbershop, where would you suggest that they go?
Um, you can go online. Uh, the national organization is called the Barbershop Harmony Society, and they have a very excellent website. And you can go in and say, "Tell me about choruses near me," and they'll give you contacts and where they meet and when they meet. So it's pretty easy to get accommodated in that way.
Okay. Great. Excellent, Dad. Well, thanks. Thanks for sharing the stories, and thanks for sharing the music all these years with me, and love you very much.
Thank you.
And
Enjoyed it.
and we have a
Oh.
prop. We have one of the props that
That's
was
right.
there's John McDougald, ladies and gentlemen. Conversations with Dreadlock Dave.